My name is Rick Morris. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in Clearwater, Florida. Welcome to our session today. The title on your screen, Reflections, Owning Up and Understanding the Impact, might seem like a lot, but don't sweat it. We're here and we'll break it down together. And you're not here because you're bad guys. You're here because, like everybody, you've made some choices that didn't quite hit the mark. And that's okay. We're human and humans make mistakes. What counts is what we do next, right? This session is about understanding those choices, especially the ones around sexual behavior, and figuring out how they've affected you and the people around you. We're going to talk about some heavy stuff like laws, consequences, and responsibility. But we're also going to talk about change and growth and hope. We're here to learn, to understand, and to take that first step toward doing things differently. This journey is about growth, about understanding, about making better choices moving forward. We believe in your ability to change, and we're here to support you in every step of the way. Remember, it's not about pointing fingers, but about learning to point ourselves in the right direction. So let's dive in, keep an open mind, and start this journey together. Our journey continues today, taking us deeper into understanding our actions and, more importantly, the impact of these actions. As we embark on this journey, it's essential to understand that this is a safe place, free of judgment, and the goal here is growth, understanding, and most importantly, making better choices. Firstly, let's talk about grasping the weight of our actions. You might think that your actions only affect you, but in reality, they create ripples that extend far beyond you. Imagine throwing a stone into a calm lake. The splash may seem small, but the ripples continue to spread out, reaching farther than the stone itself. Just like that stone, your actions have a broad reach, affecting your family, your friends, your community, and indeed your future too. They aren't isolated incidents. They create patterns and perceptions that shape your life. Now on to acknowledging our mistakes and taking responsibility. Nobody is perfect. We all make mistakes. But the critical difference between staying stuck and moving forward is acknowledging these errors. Acceptance is the first step toward change. When we admit our mistakes, we acknowledge that we have the power and control to make different choices. It's about owning up, not just for the sake of being honest, but because it's the first step toward rehabilitation. Lastly, let's consider realizing how our actions around our sexual behavior affect us and others. Our actions, particularly concerning sexual behavior, can have lasting implications.
I'm not a monster. I'm a person that made mistakes. I was a child. And I I didn't even know what I was doing.
We all want to protect children. Listing juveniles on the public sex offender registry doesn't protect anyone. Putting their name and their faces and their address on the public registry devastates entire families.
We were playing with dolls, and the dolls were kissing, then we were kissing, and then it led to little fondling, over the clothes, under the clothes. That was it, but obviously that was enough to convict.
I was 12 and she was 8. I was during the summer, and I, experimented and did some things that shouldn't have done, but that I didn't know.
I didn't know the consequences. I thought something like this came with a grounding or a spanking. I was still that young. I've spent maybe close to 8 years behind bars.
Is that you?
That is me. I was young, right? When you hear sex offender, you don't think it's a 12-year-old little boy that's crying himself to sleep in a juvenile cell.
Most people think if you're on a registry, you're definitely dangerous. And so, but it's really, the real fact about it is that there's a broad range of offenses that can place a person, or especially a child, on the registry.
Where's your socks?
We all want to keep our children safe. The problem is that the laws are based on faulty assumptions. They're based on the assumption that children and adolescents who commit sex offenses are at high risk to commit more sex offenses. This isn't true. There are many studies, there's been over 30, that show low recidivism rates for youth who have sexually offended. That's the main point of registration and notification, is to reduce sexual recidivism, and that does not work.
I was a child. I was misunderstood. I did something wrong, yes. Punish me, and punish me appropriately. But don't throw me into a den of lions.
And I can understand paying some sort of price for doing something that wasn't right, but absolutely not have them put on the public registry and to have their names in all of the local newspapers and then expect them to go to school and mingle with the other kids.
The police will publish your information on the official website. In some states, they'll make mailers, they'll make flyers. Sometimes it's lawn signs saying sex offender lives here.
And all the neighbors were handed out pamphlets describing my sons and the house and where the sex offenders live. Vigilante groups coming to my house, a Molotov cocktail thrown at the house. The holes are still there around my bedroom window where the BBs went through the vinyl siding on the house. They were 11 and 13 years old.
A person on the registry, even if it's a person that's 11 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old, cannot enter or live in zones that are frequented by children, meaning a park, a daycare, a nursery, a school.
I found it hard to find a place to live. It's been difficult to keep jobs. I dropped out of college because of the registry. The registry also directly affects my own children, my wife. We have moved 9 different times within the past 3 years. They've been in 4 or 5 different schools. And that makes me feel like a horrible parent because I can't give my children what they need.
No matter how hard they're trying right now in their lives to get their lives together, it's never going to go away. You just Google up their names and up comes all the sex offender information. For what happened when they were 10 and 12 years old is turning out to be a life sentence.
This person has this label for the rest of their life based on something that they did when they were a child.
Juveniles should not be subjected to registration or notification. In the absence of any supportive evidence whatsoever that there's a community safety effect, youth should be protected from these laws.
On a personal level, they can impact our mental health, our self-esteem, and even how we view relationships and intimacy. For others, it can inflict emotional and psychological harm that they might carry for years, if not a lifetime. Remember, everyone we interact with is someone's child, someone's sibling, someone's friend, and they deserve respect and consideration just like we do.
My trauma began when I was about 5 or 6 years old. I was laying in bed watching TV with my siblings. My oldest sibling is 6 years older than me, and the middle sibling is 4 years older than me. And my mom had called out and she said, "Hey kids, it's time to get ready for bed." I was a 5-year-old little girl. I started changing clothes into my pajamas, and my 12-year-old sibling recalls looking at me and thinking, "I need to know more," which is common. Sibling sexual abuse and trauma often starts out as curiosity, which is how my situation did start out. On some level, I knew it was wrong, but I didn't understand what was happening and what was wrong about it. I didn't fully understand what the trauma I had experienced and the damage it had created until I was 45 years old.
Moving ahead, we strive at self-reflection. The rearview mirror, this stage is about understanding our past choices, especially those related to our sexual behaviors. Remember, the goal here is not to dwell on the past, but to learn from it. Just as we use a car's rearview mirror to understand what's behind us, self-reflection allows us to see our past actions more clearly. It's about taking a step back and observing our choices, like an outsider looking in, to better comprehend why we behaved in certain ways. This process can help us see patterns, triggers, and influences that we might have missed while we were in the heat of the moment. This brings us to the next point, figuring out what drove us to act inappropriately. Every action we take, appropriate or not, has a driving force behind it. It could be peer pressure, curiosity, misunderstanding, or even our struggle with personal issues. Uncovering these drivers can help us to see the full picture and learn to manage these influences better. The final step in this reflective process is understanding how these actions landed us here. It's about connecting the dots between our past choices and our current circumstances. In understanding this, we can realize that our actions have consequences, sometimes severe ones. Learn to make choices that lead us toward healthier, more productive paths in the future. Remember, looking in the rearview mirror isn't about driving in the reverse. It's about learning from what's behind us so we can navigate what's ahead more wisely. It's about turning reflection into insight and insight into better actions. As we continue our journey, we now arrive at the stage of owning it, taking responsibility. This step is often challenging but incredibly crucial for our growth and rehabilitation. Firstly, responsibility is about admitting when we've messed up, even when it's hard. It's not just saying the words, but feeling them, understanding them, and meaning them. It's about letting go of defensiveness and excuses and accepting our role in the choices we made. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but growth often comes from discomfort.
What goes through your mind at that moment?
I just wasn't really thinking about anything other than sex. I just wanted my needs met, and I realized that it was wrong now, but at the time, it didn't really feel wrong. It felt right for me, but I realize now that that was messed up, what I did. And
our second point is about understanding that the law isn't just some abstract concept. It has real implications for our lives. Laws are there for a reason. They create order, they protect us from and others from harm. When we disregard the laws, especially around sexual behavior, we risk not only legal consequences, but also the damage to our relationships, mental health, and future opportunities. Finally, when we step up and take responsibility, we begin the process of change. Responsibility is powerful. It gives us control over our lives. When we accept our mistakes, we take the driver's seat in our journey, steering ourselves toward growth and away from harmful choices. Remember, owning up and taking responsibility is not about punishing ourselves for the past. It's about empowering ourselves for the future. By accepting our mistakes, we clear the path for change, healing, and making better choices that respect both our well-being and the well-being of others. Transitioning from our external focus, we move more toward an inward examination and looking inwards. How actions impact you. This stage is about recognizing the profound effects of our actions, particularly our sexual behaviors, have on our own lives. Our first point to consider is that our sexual behavior doesn't just affect others, it affects us too. Each decision we make, each action we take, leaves an imprint on us. It can shape our self-perception, our mental health, overall well-being. It can even influence our approach to relationships and intimacy. Next, we have from legal consequences to damaged relationships and even our self-esteem. These repercussions of inappropriate sexual behavior aren't abstract or distant. They're real, tangible, and can drastically alter our lives. Legal consequences can range from juvenile detention to a criminal record. It could damage our relationships with our family, our friends, and potential partners, causing a loss of trust that's hard to regain. It can even undermine our self-esteem, making us question our worth and our ability to make positive choices. Finally, we have to acknowledge that our actions today can determine our path tomorrow with school, our jobs, and our relationships. Every choice we make is a step on our life's journey. Inappropriate sexual behavior can result in disciplinary actions at school, limit our job prospects, and even isolate us from social circles. But the good news is that the reverse is also true. By making better choices, we can shape a future that's full of potential and promise. Remember, we aren't just passive players in our lives. We're active participants, and our actions significantly impact our journey. So let's strive to make choices that not only respect others, but also foster our own growth and our own well-being. Let's take a look at John's story. John was once in a similar position as many of the teenagers watching this. He made some mistakes that hurt himself and others around him. But after he was arrested, he decided to take responsibility for his actions. He enrolled in treatment just like this one and began to understand the impact of his choices. John now works as a mentor for teenagers going through the same struggles he once did. He's living proof that there is a way and a time to change and make a positive impact. Let's think about how our actions impact others. Moving on, let's shift our gaze from internal to the external, exploring looking outwards, how our actions impact others. This step is about understanding the profound effects our choices, especially those involving sexual behavior, can have on those around us. Our first consideration is that our choices can cause real harm and distress to others. The harm isn't always physical. Often it's emotional and psychological. Our actions can leave others feeling violated, confused, or mistrustful, inflicting damage that they may take years to heal. Remember, each individual we interact with is a person, and their own feelings and experiences and rights. It's important that we always consider this in our actions. Next, they affect how people and friends and family and future partners see and treat us. Our actions can shape others' perceptions of us, which in turn shapes how they interact with us. Trust once broken is hard to rebuild, and our inappropriate behaviors can lead to strained relationships or even complete isolation. Finally, we need to understand that our actions can start a chain reaction. They can impact someone else's life in a big way. Like dropping a pebble in that pond, our actions create ripples that can change the course of someone's life significantly. So as we move forward, let's keep in mind the broader impacts of our actions. Understanding this is not meant to burden us with guilt, but to empower us with empathy and responsibility. The goal is to make choices that respect the well-being of others just as much as our own. Take a minute and watch this short video of how sexual actions affected this child.
I always played in the basement, and his bedroom was in the basement. I don't recall how I ended up in his room, but my first memory I have is I feel I was laying on the floor, and the best way I can describe it is I felt like someone was touching me and looking at me like a science project. And like many people who suffer from trauma, I describe it as floating to the ceiling, and I can just look down at that little girl, and she didn't understand what was happening. She was confused. And then the abuse kind of progressed, and I recall different bedrooms in the home. I recall a bathroom in the home, and at some point I definitely put it together that this may not be right. The thing is, my body responded to his touch. My body did not know that it was my sibling touching me. So my body responded to the touch. On some level, I enjoyed the touch, but on some level, I knew that was wrong. So I was conflicted. I wanted the attention, I wanted the touch, but I knew it was wrong. It didn't really land in my head that this was completely wrong. I just chalked it up to, it's two kids being curious. I was complicit, because it even came to a point when I started seeking him out. I know that there was inappropriate touching, and it felt very transactional. I was a plaything. I was a toy. I was an experiment. And I don't think that my sibling was looking at me as another human being.
As we reach the conclusion of today's session, we now turn our focus towards the future and taking the wheel and moving forward. This step is about harnessing the understanding we've gained and applying it to create positive changes in our life. Firstly, recognize and acknowledge our mistakes is the first step toward change. There's power in acknowledgement that can't be understated. When we admit to ourselves that we made mistakes, we give ourselves the chance to learn and grow from them. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. Once we see clearly, we can navigate better. Next, we consider that it's about learning to make choices that respect ourselves, others, and the law. Every choice we make is an opportunity for respect. Respect for our own well-being, respect for the well-being of others, and for societal structures designed to keep us safe. This respect should guide us in our decisions, steering us away from harmful behaviors. And finally, let's remember that we're not defined by our past, but by what we choose to do now. Our past may have shaped us, but it does not have to define us. Every moment, every choice is a new opportunity to define who we are. It's about steering our lives toward respect, understanding, and empathy, using our past not as a chain, but as a compass. Remember, moving forward is not about forgetting our past. It's about learning from it. It's about taking the wheel. It's about driving with understanding and respect and steering ourselves toward a better future. We have the power to change our course, and together we'll learn how. All right, guys, we've done some heavy lifting today. We've looked inward, outward, and talked about some pretty serious stuff. But remember, this is all part of our journey toward understanding growth and change. Acknowledging our past actions, especially our sexual behaviors, might not be easy, but it's where our journey starts. And taking responsibility, that's our first big step forward. It's about owning up to our mistakes, but more than that, it's about promising ourselves to learn from them. Remember, our actions have power, and that includes the power to bring about positive change. We can make choices that respect ourselves and others, and choices that help us build a better future. This journey won't always be easy, but trust me, it's worth it. Because at the end of it, you'll find a stronger, more respectful, and more understanding you. And that's a journey worth taking. Let's commit to this journey, and let's walk this path together, onwards and upwards. All right, we've covered a lot of ground. Let's do a quick wrap up and take a look at what we've learned. Firstly, self-reflection. It's like checking the rearview mirror, understanding our past to navigate our future better. Next, owning up. Nobody said admitting our mistakes is easy, but it is a step we're going to take if we want to grow and change. Then we looked at how our actions, particularly our sexual behavior, can impact us. Legal troubles, damaged relationships, even our future plans. Our choices today can and will shape tomorrow. We also talked about our actions and how they can impact others. It is crucial to remember that our choices can hurt other people, but we can also make choices that respect and value those around us. And finally, the journey forward. It all starts with understanding our actions and taking responsibility. With every better choice we make, we're creating a path to a better, more positive future. Remember, this journey is all about growth and change. And guess what? We're in it together. Let's keep going and keep strong. As a summary, I want you to remember today that this section of your treatment isn't about dwelling on the past, but using it as a guide to better choices in the future. Change is not easy, but it is possible. And it starts with understanding and taking responsibility. And also remember, every person's journey is unique, and success might look different for others. The most important thing is to keep moving forward, learning, and growing. Guys, I'm Rick Morris, a licensed mental health counselor in Clearwater, Florida. I believe in you, and change is possible.